Hello, my badass friends. My name is Cece, and this is my badass life. And if I don't look all cheery faced today, it's because I'm not. I woke up this morning with just that familiar feeling of dread in my body, and has nothing to do with my health. It has everything to do with what's happening in our country. And I need to share some of that with you. And actually, I recorded this vlog a couple of times, and I realized I was so freaking angry that I needed to take a step back, and I needed to go get my head straight and get my chill vibe on before I could actually have this conversation with you. But so I went and did I did a qigong routine to get my breath working, and then I did a very fast walk. Right now I'm still nursing a tendon injury from last year climbing up the West Peak, and so I can't run just yet, which is usually very helpful to work off that kind of frustration and anger. But the biggest thing I want to share is that I'm just so sad. I'm just so heartbroken at what's happening in this country and how people are treating each other, and I can't understand why more people aren't speaking out. And I know that whatever I say may or may not make a difference, but I'm going to ask you to bear with me today. I'm going to ask you to stick with me. And even though this is going to be a little bit of a rabbit trail, and it might be a little longer podcast, but I'm just so disappointed in America. And I'm disappointed about the big bad bill. I'm disappointed about what's happening with immigration. I'm disappointed that Project 2025 is being played out right in front of our eyes, and we're ignoring it. And now I'm disappointed in the fact that that there have been these terrible weather disasters, especially in Texas with all that flooding, and these people are missing their children. People are dying, and the other side is calling it fake weather and taking zero accountability, even though they're the ones who have defunded NOAA and the National Weather Service. And by the way, there are lots of meteorologists right now who have said that they will not be able to accurately predict anything this year, with weather balloons not going up how they're supposed to, etc. And by the way, doing away with the NOAA was actually written in Project 2025 because they don't believe in climate change. So instead, it's fake weather. And they're even suggesting that it's Biden's fault. Now, they're 6 months in office. I'm sorry, but you can't blame the other guy anymore, especially the guy that believed in science. Not happening. So, and one more little side note about the weather and national disasters. They have now shifted FEMA money, diverted to ICE. So if you think you're going to be getting any natural disaster aid, guess what? And most of the people who are okay with that are the people in the states who need those natural disaster monies the most. Red states. Yes, I'm just saying that all of this is getting very, very disturbing. And then on top of it, we have this big, ugly bill, which, aside from the fact that it's going to throw millions of people off of their Medicaid, including, by the way, 1.8 million cancer survivors, which I'm going to tell you, most cancer survivors don't end up on Medicaid because they're too lazy to work, or because they're poor and destitute. If they are poor and destitute, it's because they lost their job, because cancer treatment is fucking hard and sometimes debilitating. And so I could give you a huge long list of what's in the big ugly bill and the ugly coming your way, but I'm going to ask you to do that because you're smart and I know you can find those things. But a couple of the things that I do want you to be aware of are this: they are cruel, but they're not stupid. And the reason I say that is because most of the things that have now been approved and written into law in the big ugly bill won't come to fruition until 2026. Do you know why that is? Midterm elections, baby. Because they think that if they can bamboozle you or distract you with all these other insane things that they're doing between now and then, you will forget and vote them back in office. And then they can just continue the reign of terror. And by the way, they've got a win-win built into this, because if all these things don't happen until 2026 and they do happen to lose their seats in Congress, then they're just going to blame it on the Democrats. But I'm here to tell you, and mark my words, no Democrats voted for this bill. No Democrats voted for this bill. Therefore, not their fault. So you might have to rewind that after 2026 to prove that I said it. But these are the things this is the timeline for the big ugly bill. Medicaid work rules don't go into effect until December 2026. Food aid restrictions not until late 2026. Clean energy credits end mid to late 2026. Student loan changes happen gradually by 2026. Affordable housing cuts phased in post 2025. Rural hospital funding declines start in 2026. By the way, our rural hospitals are calling this the death bill, and they're saying 1 in 4 nursing homes might close. And by the way, that letter that y'all got from Social Security that said that this is a tax cut for Social Security recipients, you may want to actually go read the wording in the bill, because that is not true at all. And here's the biggest thing that you don't know about. All that talk about not touching Medicare, guess what, folks? If you're on Medicare, you will be affected because of something called the PAYGO Act, the Statutory Pay As You Go Act. This act mandates spending cuts when legislation increases the deficit, which it will by $5 trillion, and the bill is expected to trigger the PAYGO Act, which will lead to automatic reductions in Medicare spending up to $500 billion. I'm just saying, they didn't even have to write it into the bill because they knew that this would happen, because this was a budget reconciliation bill. So that's what I'm saying, folks. You are not being told the truth. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. People don't argue with their own ideas. Go out, find your own facts, but find real ones from reliable places, okay? I myself am actually going to download this bill and start sifting through it so that I can back up what I'm saying. I did the same thing with Project 2025. Remember that thing that they, ignored? Moving on, I really, really want to talk about this immigration situation. And I'm gonna be the first to tell you, I agree. Immigration was a problem. It wasn't perfect. It was a broken system and it needed fixed. But this is not the way to do it, because we are disappearing people. And only 8% of those people are violent criminals. 8%, 8%. Case in point, I watched a girl being ripped off of a tree yesterday. Ripped off of a tree by armed and masked ICE agents. She was maybe 19 years old. I'm relatively certain she was not a violent criminal, but there are quotas now that they have to meet. So they're taking everybody they can. And not only that, now they're talking about making these detainees, especially the ones in Florida, in that thing that looks like a concentration camp, they're talking about making them work basically like slaves. We're talking like indentured servitude, because what they did was they said to the farmers, well, if you vouch for this person, then, maybe we won't detain them. But, if you have bad judgment, then maybe we'll just detain the farmers. They think they're being funny, but in reality, we know that they're being serious. And I say that because the Secretary of Agriculture just said that detentions will continue, and there are plenty of Medicaid recipients who can take these farm workers' places. Once again, I'm going to go back to that 1.8 million cancer survivors on Medicaid. How's that going to work for you? You're going to take a cancer survivor who can barely walk each day and can barely keep their head out of the toilet from the nausea and have them work in the farms at 95 degrees? Yeah. And that's not called a work camp or indentured servitude. I'm just saying, things are not right, people. This is not normal. And while people say to me all the time, if this bothers you so much, why don't you step away from it? You need to limit your exposure. You need to do this. You need to do that. I get that, right? Like, I wish that I could. But there's a couple of things about that. One is, I am made of empathy and compassion. You want to call that woke? You call it whatever. I call it, what would Jesus do? But hey, I think some other people could really stand to read their New Testament a little better than they actually have, because right now a lot of people are using God's name in vain to do some evil shit. But I'm digressing once again. So yeah, could I step away? Maybe, but the thing is, I don't have the luxury of not being informed, because yes, right now I still have my marriage rights. Yes, right now I still have my freedoms. Yes, right now I still have my voting rights as a woman. And yes, right now I still have my health insurance. But how will I know when that's going away if I don't pay attention? And not only that, at this point, with everything I'm seeing, including the armed militia marching through MacArthur Park soccer fields yesterday, how do you turn away now without feeling like you're complicit? You know, if those of you who are able to close your eyes to all this and put your blinders on and say, it doesn't affect me, if you have yet to see how much privilege you have by being able to do that, and you can still sleep at night and you can walk away and you can have that luxury, well, then more power to you. But I can't do it because right now, any of us with common sense and logic who haven't been brainwashed by this propaganda need to be speaking up. Because if we don't, who will? Seriously, if we don't, who will? And right now, it's somebody else. But we are all birthright citizens. And I'm going to leave you with that. So, my heart is broken. And yes, many days I'm angry. But the worst part is that waking up in the morning and waking up to a reality that just is filled with dread. And for those of you ignoring this reality, you know, again, good for you that you can ignore this reality. You know, I hope that you know, we still have a country after all of this. It's just, you know, and I just keep thinking of that Martin Luther King quote that, you know, no one is free until we're all free. If one of us isn't free, none of us are free. And I know I probably didn't quote that correctly. We'll say I'm paraphrasing it, but that's where I'm at right now. And there's going to be a lot of Tai Chi routines and a lot of sound therapy in my future until enough people stand up and say, this has got to stop. If you value your country, if you value democracy, I don't even care what side of the fence you're on anymore, politically or otherwise, atheist or Christian, we need to wake up. We just need to wake up.